Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim bismillahir rahmanir rahim inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala an-nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima Allahumma salli wa sallim ala abdika wa rasulika wa salli ala al-mu'minina wal mu'minat wal muslimina wal muslimat wa barik ala Muhammadin wa azwajihi wa dhurriyyatihi. Last week we started the Battle of Badr, and we mentioned the mention of Al-Badr in the Quran, the verses of the Quran that speak about the Battle of Badr from Surah Al-Imran, from Surah Al-Anfal, etc. Today, inshallah, we're going to be continuing with the Battle of Badr, some details about Badr, the number of the Muslims that participated in Badr, the virtues of those who participated in Badr, what distinguishes Badr from other battles that occurred in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and some other details related to the beginning of the battle. So we begin by mentioning who participated in the Battle of Badr and what were their virtues. So whoever participated in the Battle of Badr was known as Al-Badri. They were known and attributed to the Battle of Badr. And this was a specific quality or specialty of the Battle of Badr. Because of its significance in Islam, because of its importance, those who participated in Al-Badr are known to be Al-Badri. No other battle in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had this significance, that whoever participated in it was named after it or attributed to it. So any companion that participated in Al-Badr was known as a Badri Sahabi, a companion that participated in the Battle of Badr. And then those who participated in the Battle of Badr were known to be from the best of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. Imam al-Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi narrates from Mu'adh ibn Rifa'a ibn Rafi' al-Zuraqi radiyallahu anhu, who narrates from his father, who was also a Badri companion. He says that Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and asked him, "What is your view about those companions of yours that participated in the Battle of Badr?" Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "I consider them to be the best of my companions." Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam responded by saying, "We too, in the angels, consider those angels that Allah sent to fight in the Battle of Badr to be the best of the angels." Because we learnt last week that Allah Azza wa Jal sent down 3,000 or 5,000 marked angels who fought with the believers in the Battle of Badr. So here Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam is saying, we too, meaning the Malaika, consider those angels who participated in the Battle of Badr to be the best of angels. Another virtue, those Sahaba who participated in the Battle of Badr are forgiven till Judgment Day. There's a hadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu in both Al-Bukhari and Muslim, that when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had set out his plans to conquer Mecca in the 8th year, one of the companions, Hatib ibn Abi Balta'a, out of his worry for relatives that might be in Mecca, sent a letter warning them about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's plans. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam found out about this, when he discovered that one of his own companions had forewarned the people of Mecca about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's imminent arrival in Makkah Mukarramah to conquer Makkah Mukarramah, to liberate Makkah Mukarramah, he questioned him. And Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu said, "O Rasulullah, he is a man who has betrayed Allah and his messenger. He gave away your secrets. He gave away your plans." Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam responded to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu by saying, "He is from the people of Al-Badr. Perhaps Allah glanced at the people of Badr, لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ اطَّلَعَ عَلَى أَهْلِ بَدْرٍ, and said to them, Jannah is wajib on you." So here Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, or another version of the hadith says, Allah has forgiven you. So again, the fact that this companion radiallahu anhu had participated in the Battle of Badr was a significant virtue enough for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to dismiss the possibility that he committed betrayal and khiyana against Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying, Allah has forgiven the people of Al-Badr, those who participated in the battle of Badr. Angels fought in this battle. The same has not been mentioned about other battles. In the Musnad of Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayh, from Abu Dawood al-Mazini, who himself witnessed Al-Badr, a companion radiyallahu anhu, he says, in the battle I would be running after the opponent to strike them, and before I could even reach that person, their head would be severed from their body and falling onto the ground. Who was doing this? This was divine assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the form of angels. So angels participated in the battle of Badr. Now, what is the cause of the battle of Badr? What were the occasions, or what were the surroundings, the context of the battle of Badr? If you recall, a few weeks ago, we studied some of those small skirmishes that took place before Badr itself. One of them was Al-Ushayra. And Al-Ushayra, in that particular battle, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had set out with 200 companions to intercept the caravan of Abu Sufyan that was traveling to Syria for trade. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had missed the caravan. Abu Sufyan had already passed and he had reached Syria. This was the same trade caravan that was now returning from Syria. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam learnt that Abu Sufyan is now returning to Mecca with a trade caravan fully laden with commercial merchandise and goods. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gathered the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and addressed them by saying, this caravan that is returning with Abu Sufyan, the caravan of the Quraysh, is fully laden. It's full of goods and merchandise. Proceed towards this caravan. It wouldn't surprise me if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to award this caravan to us as spoils of war. Of course, the antagonism of the Quraysh had not stopped even after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had migrated to the city of Medina Munawwara. Quraysh were continuously scheming. They were continuously antagonizing the believers. And many of the goods that were being sold or being traded in this particular caravan were possessions that were left behind by the believers when they were forced to migrate from the city of Makkah Mukarramah. So this is why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had set out to intercept the caravan of Abu Sufyan. Now Abu Sufyan was traveling with about 30 to 40 men. They had 1,000 camels full of goods and approximately 50,000 dinar gold coins. Almost everybody in Mecca had given something to trade. Almost everyone. Young or old, male or female, they had given something to be traded when Abu Sufyan was going on this trade to Syria. Except for one man whose name was Huwaytib ibn Abdul Uzza. And that's why it's mentioned that this man, Huwaytib ibn Abdul Uzza, did not participate in the battle of Badr with the Quraysh, because he had nothing to lose. When we see later on in the story, the Quraysh army being prepared to go and defend the caravan, it was because all of their goods, all of their possessions and their wealth was on that caravan. This individual, Huwaytib ibn Abdul Uzza, he refused to participate in Badr with the Quraysh because he hadn't given anything towards this war, or towards this trade, towards this business trip. So he didn't feel the need to participate either. Now, this same caravan was the one that escaped during Ushayra. When the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam learnt about the return of Abu Sufyan, not everybody was required to join the believers. Because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's intention was not war. It was to intercept the trade caravan of Abu Sufyan. Therefore, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever has their animal with them, join us. Meaning, no time was given for anyone to return to their town or their small village to collect their own animal, their own vehicle, so they can join Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whoever was present at the time and their animal was present with them, or no animal was present with them, they were asked to join. So approximately 300 plus Sahaba radiallahu anhum joined, and we're going to be studying the exact number in a few minutes. Now, there were two different mentions of spies that Rasulullah ﷺ had sent to gather news on Abu Sufyan. One is a companion by the name of Basbasa radiyallahu anhu, and another is Zubair and Talha radiyallahu anhuma. Now, Zubair and Talha radiyallahu anhuma, it's mentioned that when they set out, they were not able to gather the news in time, and they missed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when they returned. And then when they went to join Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was already returning from Al-Badr, and they met at a place called Turban. So that's why Talha and Zubayr radiyallahu anhuma were unable to participate in the Battle of Badr. Whereas this companion Basbasa radiyallahu anhu, he was sent and he received news and he brought it back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam quite swiftly. So it appears, because of these two different occasions, that Talha and Zubayr radiyallahu anhu were probably sent first. And then Basbasa radiyallahu anhu was sent during the journey itself, when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam anticipated, and he and the Sahaba had already left in anticipation of Abu Sufyan's caravan to gather further intelligence about Abu Sufyan. Anas radiyallahu anhu says, when Basbasa brought the news, I was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was only I and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam there. This is what Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu is saying. Now, Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anhu was one of those companions who joined but didn't fight because of his tender age. So he was there, he participated, but he didn't actually fight in the Battle of Al-Badr. And we're going to mention who fought and who did not fight, who fought and who did not fight in a couple of minutes. Were those who stayed behind rebuked? Now, generally, when a command is given that everyone needs to march, this is called nafir am. انفروا خفافا وثقالا وجاهدوا بأموالكم وأنفسكم في سبيل الله. Like in the Battle of Tabuk, mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah, when the command came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that everyone must march, orders were given by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, انفروا خفافا وثقالا. Leave whether you have lots of equipment with you or less equipment with you, and strive in the path of Allah with yourselves and with your wealth. All of the Sahaba had to leave. Everyone had to participate, except for, of course, those who have genuine excuses, such as injuries, or they are handicapped, they're disabled, and they can't attend. And we know the famous story of the three Sahaba radiyallahu anhum who are unable to participate without any real reason, and they were boycotted. It's a famous story. It's mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah and the famous hadith of Ka'b bin Malik radiyallahu anhu. So this same Ka'b bin Malik radiyallahu anhu, he is saying in that famous hadith, lengthy hadith, when he speaks about the boycott and the punishment that he had to suffer because of his staying behind in the Battle of Tabuk. In that hadith he mentions, I never stayed behind in any battle except for Tabuk and Badr. Except Badr, we were not all required to go. So from this we learn that Badr was one of those battles that the Sahaba were not all required to go because a battle was not anticipated. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's intention was to intercept the caravan. And that is why some Sahaba radiallahu anhum did not join the Muslims in the Battle of Badr. How many people participated in the Battle of Badr? It's famously known that 313 companions radiallahu anhum participated with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some say 310 plus, which probably means about 313. 60 were from the Muhajirin, the migrants, and 240 plus were from the Ansar. So the majority of the Jama'ah, 80% you can say, were made up of the Ansar, the helpers of Medina Munawwara. Bara bin Adhib radiallahu anhu says, we used to speak about the people of Badr like the group of Talut. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the army of Talut that fought who? Jalut, Goliath. And who was in that army? Which famous prophet of Allah? Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam. And there were only a few believers with them. And how many were there? 313. So we used to speak about the people of Badr like the people of Talut. There were 313 or 310 plus in number, and they were all mu'min, they were all believers, they all believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This same Bara' bin Adhib radiallahu anhu says, I and Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu were considered too young to participate. We were too young. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inspected the ranks and he sent us back. We wanted to join. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam inspected the ranks when he reached a certain point in the journey. Like any commander would do. Like, who's with me? I want to see, are they rijal, are they men? Or are they, who are they? So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is inspecting the ranks and he sees Bara bin Adhib radiallahu anhu, Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhuma, young companions, 14 years old, 15 years old, and he returned them home. We're going to learn more about that in a couple of minutes as well. A few more companions as well. The hadith of Umar radiallahu anhu clarifies that there were 313 in number. There's a narration of 313 cited in Musnad Ahmad, Bazzar, and Mu'jam al-Tabarani on the authority of Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. And one narration says 314, perhaps 313 companions, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam being the 314th. This is all in Fathul Bari. Now from the Ansar, the majority that joined were from the Khazraj tribe. Even though the tribe of Al-Aws, these were the two major tribes of the Ansar, even though Aws were larger in number, Aws were stronger, Aws had more means, because the town or the village or the neighborhood of Aws was further away, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had announced, join me, he didn't give them permission to go and fetch their animals, to go and fetch their ride, because there was not enough time. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't want to miss the caravan a second time while they were returning. That's why more people from the tribe of Khazraj participated in the battle of Badr. Now, which Sahaba radiallahu anhum stayed behind with a valid excuse? Some Sahaba had stayed behind with a valid excuse, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had allotted for them a portion of the spoils of war, and Allah rewarded them because they had the intention to join, but they were unable to do so. The first of them is whom? Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, Dhun Nurayn, the possessor of two lights, because he married Ruqayya radiallahu anha, and then Kulthum radiallahu anha, the two daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why was he unable to participate? Because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's daughter Ruqayya, who was married to Uthman radiallahu anhu, was unwell at the time. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, you stay behind and take care of your wife, my daughter. She died soon after. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu says in the hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, you will be rewarded the same as those who participate in the Badr and receive a share of the spoils. Talha and Zubair, Talha bin Ubaidillah and Sa'id bin Zayd. I said Talha and Zubair earlier, I apologize. It was Talha radiallahu anhu and Sa'id bin Zayd. Both of them were from the Ashara Mubashara, the 10 Sahaba promised by Allah of Jannah. Remember, there's 10 Sahaba like that, Ashara Mubashara. So both of them, Talha radiallahu anhu, Talha ibn Ubaidillah, and Sa'id ibn Zayd. Now remember who Sa'id bin Zayd is? Whose brother-in-law is Sa'id bin Zayd? Umar radiallahu anhu. Remember Umar radiallahu anhu when he went to his sister's house to beat her because she had embraced Islam, her and her husband. Who was her husband? Sa'id bin Zayd. And his dad was Zayd bin Amr bin Nufail, who was a person of Tawheed even before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam became a prophet. He was one of those from the Quraysh who was a person of Tawheed. Otherwise, most of the Quraysh were on shirk. So Sa'id bin Zayd bin Amr bin Nufail. Both of these Sahaba radiallahu anhum were sent by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to spy, and we know that when they returned, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had already set off, already departed to intercept the caravan. So they met him at a place called Turban. When they were returning, they were unable to join Al-Badr. Turban is about 15 to 18 miles from Medina Munawwara. Another one was Abu Lubabah radiallahu anhu. Now Abu Lubabah radiallahu anhu joined Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but when they reached a place called Bi'r Rawha, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is inspecting the ranks, he sent him back to be the deputy in Medina Munawwara. And Abdullah bin Maktoum radiallahu anhu, who was the blind companion, Abasa wa tawalla an ja'ahu al-a'ma, the one mentioned in Surah Abbas, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam appointed him as the Imam in his absence. So Abu Lubaba radiallahu anhu wasn't able to participate because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sent him back as a deputy in Medina Munawwara. Another companion, Abu Umamah radiallahu anhu, he was unable to participate because his mother was sick. He still wanted to go. His uncle said to him, look after your sick mother. He said, you look after your sick sister. The news reached Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, you stay behind and look after your sick mother. When Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam had returned, the mother had passed away. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went and prayed over her. Another companion was Harith bin Simma. He fell on the way to Al-Badr and injured himself at Rawha, the well of Rawha, and he was sent back by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a result. Another companion was Khawat bin Jubair. He also hurt himself in another place called Wadi Safra, and he was returned. Hudhayfa bin Yaman radiallahu anhu. He was joining Medina Munawwara to embrace Islam. And on the way there, he met the Quraysh. The Quraysh saw him, or people from the Quraysh saw him. And they said, where are you going? Because the Quraysh are now, later on in the story, marching towards Al-Badr to meet the Prophet ﷺ for battle. He said that we're going to Medina to join the Prophet ﷺ to become believers. He said, we'll let you go to Medina, but don't join him in the battle. So when Hudhayfa radiallahu anhu meets the Prophet ﷺ, he tells him what had happened. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said to him, fulfill your promise. Fulfill your promise. Don't join the ranks. Fulfill your promise. Jabir bin Abdullah radiallahu anhu, a very famous companion, Jabir bin Abdullah bin Haram radiallahu anhu, he himself says that he did not participate in the Battle of Badr. We learned earlier that Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu is one of those companions who also did not participate in Al-Badr. But he was asked, did you? He said, how could I stay behind? Hafidh bin Hajar rahmatullahi alayhi says what he means by that is he served the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So because he served the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he also went for Badr, but he didn't actually fight during that time. Allama Dhahabi says the scholars of Al-Maghazi, the scholars who wrote extensively and studied the Ghazawat and the expeditions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam extensively, do not consider Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu to be a Badri companion. Another companion that went but did not fight was Haritha bin Suraqa radiallahu anhu. Anas radiallahu anhu said he came to see what happens. He was very young. He was struck by an arrow and died. Therefore he was counted from the Badriyun. He didn't actually fight, but he's counted from the Badriyun. Now Sa'ad bin Ubadah radiallahu anhu, he was the leader of the Khazraj tribe. Did he participate in this battle or not? On one occasion, Hafidh bin Hajar says he did not participate. However, in Tahdhib al-Tahdhib, which is another book of Hafidh bin Hajar rahmatullah alayhi, he says, quoting Al-Bukhari and Ibn Hibban, that he did, and a hadith in Imam Muslim's Sahih also indicates that he did. Allahu A'lam. When did they depart? Because it's famously known that Badr occurred on the 17th of Ramadan. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had set out from Medina Munawwara on the 12th of Ramadan on a Saturday in the morning. How many animals did they have? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba had 70 camels and one horse. Only 70 camels. Each camel was allocated to a group of 3 Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And here's a beautiful story. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu narrates, in Badr just one camel was allocated to a group of 3, which they would take turns riding. Abu Lubaba and Ali radiallahu anhu were partnered with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is before Abu Lubaba was sent back to be a deputy, right? So on the way there, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is traveling. Then at one point he stops, inspects the ranks and sends Abu Lubaba back to Medina to become a deputy. But up until that point, Abu Lubaba and Ali radiallahu anhuma are sharing one camel with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Everybody's taking turns. But Ali radiallahu anhu and Abu Lubaba radiallahu anhu are feeling very, very shy. How can we let the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam walk? Let him travel. Let him ride the animal. We will walk. Rasulullah, they said, oh Rasulullah, you continue riding. We will walk on your behalf. Rasulullah said to them, you are neither stronger than I, nor am I more independent of the divine reward of walking than you are. Subhanallah, look at the humility of Rasulullah. This is an amazing story. It's really remarkable. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam could have traveled on the animal, rode the camel, the entire journey, and nobody would bat an eyelid. Nobody would say anything. He's worthy of it. He's deserving of it. He's the leader. He's Sayyidul Kawnayn. He's Mustafa, Mujtaba sallallahu alayhi wasallam. However, his humility was such, he says, you two aren't stronger than me. Number one. And number two, I need the rewards too. Subhanallah. That's humility. Now, during the battle or during the journey, generally there was a custom that camels used to have bells around their neck. So Rasulullah ﷺ instructed that the bells be cut off. Imam Muhammad bin Hassan al-Shaybani, he's one of the great students of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, he says the reason behind it was so that the camels do not choke when they're galloping. Another scholar by the name of Abu Ubaid says because it harms them, especially if they get stuck on a tree branch. However, Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi says, and this is not a fiqh issue, like there's no back and forth, but it's just different opinions of the ulama on why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam instructed this. So Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi says, I think it's because of the evil eye. And what he meant by that, Ibn Hajar says, this is supported by the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever hangs an amulet has committed shirk. So at one point, people used to hang bells around the necks of camels in order to ward off the evil eye. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam wanted to dispel this flawed understanding of the people that nothing can ward off the evil eye, only Allah has the power. The power belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. This bell is not going to do anything. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam instructed them to take it off or cut it off. Ibn Abdul Barr al-Maliki rahmatullah alayhi, one of the great scholars from the Maliki madhab, from the Maliki school, he says that it was because one who hangs the amulet thinking that it wards off the evil eye and that it's going to ward off the divine decree of Allah al-Qadr has committed a faulty act of disbelief. So then it does boil down to that whole discussion about hanging amulets around the neck. Is it permissible? Is it not permissible? So the ulama mention there's unanimous agreement amongst the ulama that if an amulet has wordings of shirk in it, it's absolutely haram and shirk to wear it. There's absolutely no doubt about that amongst the ulama. How about if it has verses of the Quran in it? If it has verses of the Quran in it, then on the condition that we believe that the power is in Allah's hands and there's nothing that we wear that can ward off al-ayn or the evil eye, if our aqidah is sound, then some ulama say it is permissible, and they base that on numerous incidences amongst the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. I'm not going to go into more detail, but it's a legitimate difference of opinion amongst the ulama. So again, the condition being that it only be the verses of the Quran or the name of Allah and His attributes, that they are written in the Arabic language because we confine it to the permissibility, and the permissibility was in the Arabic, so the actual words of Allah, the name of Allah in the Arabic language and His attributes in the Arabic language, or the verse of the Quran. It doesn't contain any shirk in it or any shirk chants or incantations or anything like that. Right? And we believe that the qudra and the power belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only, then it's permissible to wear under those conditions. Now, how many horses were with the companions? Some say 2, some say 1. If there's 2, then 1 belongs to Zubayr bin Awam radiallahu anhu and 1 belongs to Miqdad ibn Amr. However, the more sound opinion is Ali radiallahu anhu says we only had 1 horse, and that horse belonged to Miqdad bin Amr. And this Sahabi radiallahu anhu, Miqdad bin Amr, he was a Ansari companion. He's also known as Miqdad bin Aswad. So you might hear his name sometimes Miqdad bin Aswad, sometimes Miqdad bin Amr. Why was he called Miqdad bin Aswad? He was called Miqdad bin Aswad because Aswad ibn Abdi Yaghuth was a person, a man who had adopted him. And at one point, people used to attribute children to their adopted father until the verse of the Quran was revealed, call them by their father's names, like Zayd bin Haritha radiallahu anhu. At one point, people used to call him Zayd bin Muhammad until Allah revealed this verse and people started calling him by his father's name again, Zayd bin Haritha. So his actual name was Miqdad bin Amr, not Miqdad bin Aswad, but he was called Miqdad bin Aswad before that verse of the Quran was revealed. Now, at this point, it's important to note that victory comes from Allah. Think about this for a moment. The Sahaba were ill-equipped. They had 70 camels, one horse, between 313 or 314 people. Sahaba. Ibn Kathir rahmatullah alayhi mentions at this point, despite lesser means, because they followed the commands of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam accurately, everything he said tooth and nail. They didn't veer off, they didn't divert, they didn't go off even 1 inch from what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had instructed them. Allah had given them strength and bravery that others before them nor after them possessed. No jama'ah came like them, ever. Think about this. 313 companions, small in number. And then he goes on to say, Ibn Kathir rahmatullah alayh, that in short span of 30 years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's demise, this same group of Sahaba radiallahu anhum were able to march and conquer the hearts and the provinces, east and west, Persia, north, south, Yemen, into Africa. That's how far they had spread during the 30 years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's passing, because they were people who relied upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَن نَصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. And here's another beautiful story. In Musnad Ahmad, narrated on the authority of Iyad al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu, he says, I witnessed the Battle of Yarmouk. The Battle of Yarmouk happened in Umar radiyallahu anhu's time, in 15th after Hijrah. So we're looking at about 4 years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. And it was between the believers, the Muslims, and the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire. The Muslims were how many in number? 36 to 40,000. Large army. A very large army. This Sahabi radiallahu anhu says, in the Battle of Yarmouk, we had 5 commanders. Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah, Khalid bin Walid, Shurahbil bin Hasana, Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan, and Iyad ibn Ghanam radiallahu anhum ajma'een. Despite the numbers, despite these commanders, Umar radiallahu anhu wrote us a letter. Now Umar radiallahu anhu, what a man and such foresight. He didn't want the people to rely on their strength. He didn't want them to think that victory will come from us because of our numbers, because of our strength, because of our might, because of our equipment. Umar radiallahu anhu wrote to them and he said, let me show you who is greater in help and who is more fortifying. It is Allah. Seek His assistance. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was victorious in Badr with lesser numbers than you. Just remember that. And I think that lesson of humility is very, very important for all of us. We shouldn't think that it's my money, my wealth, my strength, my capacity, my intelligence, my this, my... Everything is from Allah. Remember Qarun, إِنَّ قَارُونَ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمِ مُوسَى فَبَغَى عَلَيْهِمْ وَآتَيْنَاهُ. What did they say to Qarun? Don't be arrogant. What did he say? إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. All this wealth that I have amassed is because of my mastery, my expertise, my strength, my business, competency or skill. Allah is teaching Qarun a lesson. Everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now again, going back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam inspecting the ranks. When reaching a place known as Bi'ru Abu Inabah, that was another well that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam reached with the Sahaba radiallahu anhum when he was on his journey to Al-Badr. He inspects the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and returns all of those Sahaba who are deemed too young. But what I love about this is the desire of the Sahaba, the zeal. They had zeal. Jazba, right? They wanted to join. Usama bin Zayd, the usual suspects amongst the young Sahaba. Usama bin Zayd radiallahu anhu, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, Bara bin Adhib, Rafi' bin Khudayj, Usayd bin Zuhair, Zayd bin Arqam, Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhum. They were all sent back. Bara bin Adhib says, I and Ibn Umar were returned as we were deemed too young. Now there was another companion, Umayr bin Abi Waqqas. You know the famous companion Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, his young brother Umayr, he's hiding. Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu is asking, why are you hiding? He's saying, because if the Prophet ﷺ sees me, he's going to send me home. And I want to join because I want to become a martyr. I want shahada. He says he was very young, my brother. He was so young that I was helping him tie his sword up because he was too big for him. And he was martyred in the Battle of Badr. How old was he? 16 years old. He was 16 years old and he was martyred in the Battle of Badr. Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu says, and one thing about him was that Umar radiallahu anhu was one of the earlier Muslims who migrated, even though he was very young. And Mus'ab bin Sa'ad, the son of Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, says that my father, Sa'ad, once said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting one day and somebody brought a plate with food. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate the food and he left some food behind and said, a man that will come from this road will eat the leftovers and he's a man of Jannah. Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas says, I think my brother's going to come because I just left him while he was making wudu. But who came? It was Abdullah bin Salam radiallahu anhu. He came and he ate the leftovers. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever comes from this road and eats these leftovers, he's a man of Jannah. And it was Abdullah bin Salam radiallahu anhu. Now Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is arranging the troops. When he's arranging the troops, he first establishes 3 flags that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum can gather behind. The largest flag he gives to Mus'ab bin Umair radiallahu anhu. And then he divides the 313 Sahaba into 2 major battalions. One of them are the Muhajirin, and he gives the flag of the Muhajirin to Ali radiallahu anhu. And the other was the Ansar. The other major battalion was the Ansar, and he gives the flag of the Ansar to Sa'ad bin Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. Now remember these names, Sa'ad bin Mu'adh and Sa'ad bin Ubadah. The names are going to come again and again. There are 2 Sa'ads. One is Sa'ad bin Mu'adh, one is Sa'ad bin Ubadah. Sa'ad bin Mu'adh is the leader of which tribe? Aus. And Sa'ad bin Ubadah is the leader of which tribe? Al-Khazraj, the 2 major tribes from the Ansar. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam then appointed Zubayr bin Awwam upon the right wing. So when he was setting the believers out, he had a right wing, a left wing, a rear guard. And the right wing he sets with Zubayr bin Awwam radiallahu anhu as their commander, Miqdad bin Amr on the left wing, Qais bin Sa'sa'a radiallahu anhu, the commander of the rear guard, while Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself remained the general commander of the army. The Sahaba were in a state of hunger. They were extremely hungry. Remember, it was Ramadan. Some were fasting. And we're going to mention that. Were they all fasting? Were they not all fasting? That's in the next couple of minutes. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw the state of the companions radiallahu anhum, he said, Allahumma innahum hufatun fahmilhum. Oh Allah, my Sahaba are barefooted, carry them. Allahumma innahum uratun faksuhum. Oh Allah, my Sahaba are without clothes, clothe them. Allahumma innahum jiya'un ashbi'hum. Oh Allah, my Sahaba are hungry, fill their stomachs. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu says, Allah granted victory in Badr and not a soldier returned except they had 1 or 2 camels and they were well clothed and their stomachs were also filled. Okay, I'm gonna end here inshallah. Next week we'll continue with whether the Sahaba fasted, did not fast, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam refusing to take assistance from a mushrik during the journey. And then we're going to speak about the reaction of the Quraysh when they hear the news that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is leaving Medina to intercept the caravan of Abu Sufyan, and how it riles them up and provokes them, and some of the conversations that happen at that time. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.